dislike of tabs. And we're live right at 5:00. It's Monday, May 3rd, right at 5:00 Eastern.
I see what you did there.
Time. And how's that for punctuality? Take that, Blue Glow Live button.
It is awesome.
And we're not allowed to have fun anymore. And in lieu of fun, we're gonna hang out and wait for Molly to come hang out with us. And I'm going to give a short monologue about the fact that the Oversight Board decision on Trump was announced, that it's coming down at 9 a.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. So that's going to be a very exciting long day for me, especially because I teach for an hour and a half. Right as that starts, so that's going to be exhausting.
So what do we know about the coming decision? What did the Oversight Board announce?
I just announced that it's going to be doing a panel, like a panel from stakeholders and journalists following the decision, so that they can ask questions. And we know that they have taken longer than 90 days by their own count to get to this decision. And
Molly is here, by the way.
Oh, great. And that's great. And we know that it's binding on Facebook, but that's basically all we know. So, and so I think that, and we also know that people are going to freak out about it, regardless of what happens, like kind of any way it goes.
And ultimately, it's pretty binary, right? They either let Trump back on or they don't. Hello, Molly Jong Fast.
So. You would think so. Molly, did you get your hair done?
This is how I do it since I was 19.
Absolutely whatever. It looks especially lovely today.
Thank you. But it's very humid here, so.
It is very humid here too.
So, wait, where are you?
New York City.
I'm in New York City. It's not humid, is it?
It's sort of raining. It's not Washington. It's humid, but it's humid.
I'm like, it's humid in here because I just took a shower. That's like, it's so nice to see you.
I'm honored and thrilled to be here.
What do you want to hear?
No murder threats. What?
What do you want to hear from the Facebook Oversight Board?
I want to hear they're not going to let him back, but the problem is, the real problem is Twitter, I think, more than Facebook. But I hope they don't let him back on one.
I think that, yeah.
Number one spreader of COVID misinformation. Don't give this person a platform.
Kate, do you think that Twitter will be substantially influenced by this decision?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I'm going to actually, if you want to hear me talk about this and have, and are masochistic, you can get up at 6:30 tomorrow morning and listen to me on, what is it called? NPR Morning Edition. And
what is it called?
No, because I always want to say on the media for some reason. I don't know. Or all things considered. I don't know. It's I just complete that sentence a variety of different ways. It starts with NPR. But I'm going to be talking, and I specifically, they were asking me a bunch of questions, and I was like, well, actually, you want to know what I think is super interesting? Is what the hell Twitter does, and whether they decide that they're going to make it a market differentiator to do whatever it is that's the opposite of whatever Facebook does, or Facebook has to do because of the Oversight Board, or whether the Oversight Board having such a high-profile decision and becoming so high-profile in this forces Twitter to start its own similar standards. So right now, Canada is actually contemplating or has drafts of legislation that is going to mandate that there be boards like the Oversight Board for every major speech platform operating within Canada. And so it's kind of very interesting to think about about this becoming the new industry standard. And I think that this decision is going to be a big part of that. Not because I know anything in particular or note that I know anything specific about this decision, but just because I think that this decision is going to be pretty notable, like historically.
Well, almost no matter what they do,
Right.
it's going to be notable.
But don't you
That's what I mean.
Facebook to sort of do the sleaziest thing?
Well, but the group of people, I mean, Facebook has delegated this to people other than Facebook.
Right.
And I do trust actually the structure of the oversight board to, I don't think Mark Zuckerberg is going to get to decide what they decide. I think, I believe that Mike McConnell and Jamal Green and the group of people that they have are going to make an independent decision. I don't purport to have any understanding of what that decision will be, except that them being a bunch of mostly, First Amendment scholars and human rights lawyers, I do think the temptation to think about this in the language of that they know, which is the language of rights, rather than the language of, enforcement of reasonable terms of service, is going to be really tempting for them. And so I would not be surprised to see them do something like say, well, if Facebook wants to ban leaders for political speech, they have to go through the following neurotic hoops, and Facebook didn't do that, so, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that. I do think that would be a horrible decision. Right. And I wouldn't want to see Canada say, and apologies for my intrusion on Canadian sovereignty to all of our Canadian viewers, I wouldn't want to see Canada say, hey, you need a structure. If you're a social media company, you need a structure like this because you need to be able to, have a system in which no social media platform can actually enforce its terms of service. And we don't want to be the ones who say you can't do it. So we'll merely say you have to have enough Facebook oversight board type people to do it for us. And I think that would be unfortunate. I do think it's a risk when you put law professors in charge of something like this. That said, I will read whatever they have to say with great interest. And I do think what Facebook is doing is pretty interesting. And I am very curious to see how it shakes out. If I were Jack Dorsey, I would look at this whole thing and say on behalf of Twitter, the one thing we're never going to do is have an oversight board, because I actually kind of want to decide for my own platform whether this asshole is coming back. And so I do think the market differentiation point that Kate refers to is pretty interesting. If I were Jack Dorsey and Facebook Oversight Board demands that Facebook let Trump back, I'd be like, ha ha ha, you do what you want, Facebook. He ain't coming back on Twitter. So I'm really curious to see what they do.
Yep. Yeah. No, I just I think that, that's I think that is the most immediately interesting question that is beyond what the decision is itself. And then I think the next interesting question is how does this end up having downstream effects for other world leaders in the coming weeks and months, especially in India.
Aren't we so lucky we don't have President Trump? Look at India, and Bolsonaro and Modi are killing all their people, and we're so lucky that we just have a normal non-authoritarian.
Yeah, they only killed 500,000 of us.
Well, we're getting vaccinated. India's producing all these vaccines, and they can't get them to their people. It's in their country.
Yeah.
So Molly, we haven't talked to you since
a lot of stuff.
Normal government was restored in the United States, since the coup failed, since Trump was banished to Mar-a-Lago. How are you feeling these days?
I feel good. I mean, I don't know, it's like quiet in a very nice way, and things feel like, I don't know. I mean, I wrote this piece for Vogue today about like the difference between uh the Harris marriage and the Pence marriage. And it's so nice to be able to write pieces like that that sort of are about the cultural shifts and not about like the fire hose of drama. So yeah, I'm happy. I mean, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm really concerned. I mean, the thing that's like top of mind to me is how do we get the Trump supporters vaccinated? More than anything, I mean, I've spent so much time on the podcast covering vaccination efforts and like the pandemic, and like how do we get to herd immunity, and so that's like the thing that's the most kind of personally vexing.
So, what do you think the right answer to that question
Yeah,
is?
I'm so
I
curious
mean,
to know.
on the assumption that we're not going to strap them down and inject them, which would be my preference,
Why would
frankly.
we strap them down and inject them when we could just shoot them with darts?
Darts would be fine. I'm also okay with,
Really
telling them it's the Bill Gates 5G implant, and then like saying, okay, we won't give you the implant, we'll just give you the vaccine, and like tricking them into it. But assuming we're not going to do any of those things, what do you think the right solution is?
Gotta get Trump kids, all the worst people in the world need to get out there and tell people to take the vaccine. Because now it doesn't, Fauci, these people don't give a shit about Fauci. Am I allowed to curse here?
Oh, yes.
They don't care about Fauci. They hate Fauci. Fire Fauci. So you need public health. You need someone who talks to these people who they trust, and they trust Donald Trump.
So here's something interesting that I've been thinking about recently, and I completely agree with you. But one of the things that I've been thinking about is the number of people in my Twitter feed who all have like their Twitter like the bio, or like in their Twitter like picture, whatever it is, like go get vaccinated, like vaccines are the best. And I'm starting to wonder if like the more and more people on the left do that, that they're just creating more and more of the opposite reaction and linking it more deeply to like virtue signaling on the left, and then making people even less likely to get vaccinated. Does that make sense? Because they see it as like a defiant.
I don't think it's fair to say that now, because this die was cast with President Trump. And so at this point, like what one person does is irrelevant. I think that you have a group of people who only believe in, I mean, you saw there was that quote from the Washington Post today where the woman said, Trump has never been wrong. Remember that from today's Washington Post? Trump has never been wrong about anything ever. Like, these people are not our people. This is a different world than our world, right? Like, this is not the world of like rationale. This is the world of Trump. And like, these Trump people don't really believe that Trump has got the vaccine. They really want, it's just a whole other world, and we need to speak to those people. And those are not people who listen to Biden or Fauci or so. Yeah, so that I think is the way that we have to figure out a way to bridge the divide. And like, because we have these very siloed medias, that means also like, Tucker Carlson could shut this all down today. Like, he could go on his show, 5 million viewers, and say, look, you need to take this vaccine, otherwise it's going to be banging around for the rest of,
So I have a different suggestion for how to handle this problem. Rather than trying to get right-wing Trumpist influencers to play ball, which, works if they're Mitch McConnell and they had polio when they were kids, and doesn't work And by the way, he doesn't have any influence among the
Not those
masses
people.
anyway.
Yeah.
But it basically doesn't work because they're operating according to a totally different
Right.
set of political calculus. Um, it seems to me that what we should be doing is basically trying to get as many people who want it to take it as quickly as possible, which is what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
We're the numbers we're racking up right now are really, really good, and it's probably about 30 to 35% of the country that won't take it. But
Right.
the more people you can get to take it who want it, which is to say, a lot of the people that we didn't expect to, the public health officials were really concerned about uptake in the black community. That hasn't been an issue,
Right.
right? Like there's been, issues of concern about equity and distribution and not being able to get it to poor people. That has not been an issue, right? The issue has been how many Republicans there are.
Right.
And I think here's my loose hypothesis, and it is really, I don't know if it's un-PC or PC to say. If you give it to everybody who wants it, you will concentrate the disease among Republicans. And among the group of people who don't want it, right? That's the nature of the vaccine. The moment that this community is the primary community affected by the vaccine, the tone of Fox News will change like that, because the expectation among that community is that they are not the people who are going to suffer from it. But when Tucker Carlson has to get on television and talk to his own audience, and they are basically the only people who are having
COVID symptoms.
who are having COVID symptoms, who are dying of COVID, I think that is what will change.
I'm going to tell you why that's not how it goes. I mean, because
I see it's an interesting thought, but I think I agree with Molly. I think I know what you're going to say.
no world in which that happens. First of all, they remember, like, we thought before this virus came that once it came, Tucker would take it seriously, or the Fox News. You wait for Fox News and Tucker and Trump to take something seriously. I mean, remember, he told people to take the bleach into the body. I think you can't. First of all, you don't choose who gets sick, right? So there's no, even if you say you're gonna, you have non-vaccinated Republicans and vaccinated other people. For the vaccine to really work, you need to have everybody vaccinated, right? So you're gonna have transmission to vaccinated people, and then you're gonna have people who are collateral damage, right? Like older people, younger people who can't get vaccinated yet, people who are too sick to get vaccinated. The problem with public health is that it's just like a stream of unintended consequences. So even though you say you can't ever, every time you let this virus go, you roll the dice.
So I totally agree with that, and I also agree with the people who were saying in the chat that there's that these are averages. It's not just Republicans that are vaccine hesitant. And to be clear, I'm not talking about waging biological warfare against Republicans. That's not the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is, if we are not going to force people to take it, we
should be paying people. Like in West Virginia, they're giving
So I'm all for. Look, I would be for forcing people to take this. We're not going to do that. So the question is, how vaccine hesitant are you? And my view is, okay, we got to simultaneously race to vaccinate as many people who are not hesitant as possible.
Yes.
And then you're right, that's only 90% effective. So each one of them retains some chance. But by doing that, you will bring down the transmission rate, which is directly correlated to the rate of mutation. And you will tend to concentrate the infections in the communities that, let me be really blunt and ugly about this, most deserve it at this point, right? And the reason we are, and I don't mean to be, well, I actually do mean to be fault finding with this because I have a very moralistic attitude toward it. But if you're Tucker Carlson right now, you're counting on the fact the reason you can talk that way is that it is not your people that are suffering. You're actually counting on the fact that this is disproportionately affecting black people. And by the way, that's fine with you. And my point is that the more you shift the burden to choice, the community most effective is the group of people who chose not to accept the vaccine, the more you will put pressure on the influence leaders of who are driving that to think differently about it.
I mean, I would say I think that a better solution, because that solution is just like, I think a better solution is just to have a lot of vaccines everywhere. To have rolling vaccine centers, to give the vaccine to family doctors, to say, like, you need to be pushing this, right? Like, I just saw this amazing movie that's coming out about the Sacklers and Purdue Pharma. And, like, they had doctors selling it to patients. Like, family doctors can be selling this to patients. Like, places like West Virginia, these people are not interfacing with, Fauci, but they are interfacing with their doctor. I mean, a good example, like West Virginia is a laggard, but its governor, even though he's a Republican, used to be a Democrat and is in many ways not my favorite, but he does have some innovative ideas. So he's giving this $100 savings bond for people to get the vaccine. So I think the more you can have it everywhere, you give it to family doctors, you push it, and you say, like, you need, people, we all need to be evangelists. Like, everywhere you go, I always talk to people and I say, like, I got vaccinated. I was in the trial. You should get vaccinated too. It's very safe, and I talk about my experience, and that's what we have to do.
I had a really interesting experience last night. We have a doorman that isn't usually on, but was on last night. And I was coming in with the dog and I didn't have my mask on because I've been vaccinated for 3 months, and I had kind of had gone out and I was in my pocket somewhere. And anyways, I just kind of pulled my shirt up over my nose and I said, I'm fully vaccinated. And I'm really sorry. I forgot my mask or whatever. And he was like, oh, I don't care. And I was like, oh, are you vaccinated? And he was like, oh, no, I'm not into that. And I was like, oh,
Uh-oh.
I was like, it was one of the first, a young guy-ish, youngish guy. And I just was like, wow. I kind of came back upstairs and I said to John, I was like, oh my gosh, so-and-so isn't just said this to me. And I was like, I just had not contemplated that living in a dense place like New York City, that you would not want to get vaccinated. If you're in West Virginia, there is also this practical thing, in addition to maybe being watching too much Tucker Carlson and everything else, or being a Republican. But there's also kind of maybe the practicality. Maybe you just don't come in contact with that many people all the time or something. And then you don't have that close, but that's not true of New York. You're close to people constantly. You have to get on elevators to go anywhere. Or a subway car. And so it's just kind of a crazy, I just thought it was a very strange moment. And, I don't know. So let's see. Ben is let them choose not to and see what happens and live with their consequences. Okay. So consequentialist person. Molly is give them money. And I am shoot them with darts.
Right. I'm
okay. So
wait, I don't think that's quite what I said. I would say my position is give everybody every opportunity to have the vaccine, a la what Molly is saying. I want to do everything Molly is saying to do, be really profligate with its availability, and then rely on the negative consequences to the people who don't accept it to push them in the right direction over time. Hopefully, yes. Short time.
Can I propose one more thing that's kind of related to the oversight board too, and like brings this conversation together? What about the idea of just like, we keep yelling at Facebook and Twitter to like take Trump off or take whatever off. Why are we not also yelling at cable news for like continuing to foment these lunatics? And
cable news, it's just Rupert Murdoch, right? I mean, it's not, I mean, you could yell at CNN because of DeSantis. I'm not DeSantis. What's his name? What is his name? The guy from CNN who said that Native Americans never contributed anything.
Rick Santorum.
Rick Santorum. But really, the problem is Rupert Murdoch and Fox. And
yeah.
Fox.
Well, I mean, it's a circular problem, right? Because at one level, the problem is Rupert Murdoch and Fox, but another level is the fact that that's what the public wants, or that
5 million people.
That's what the Fox News public wants. At one level, the problem is Rick Santorum telling people things like that, but at another level, that's what that segment of the electorate is demanding from him. I mean, it's a giant circle of grossness that's self-reinforcing.
I don't want to be argumentative on your show because I hate it when people are argumentative with me on my show.
Oh, no, please.
I'm like, but I do think Fox News is radicalizing its audience.
Agreed.
So they did not know they wanted it until they got too far into it. And now you've seen, like, they're trying to pull back the brakes and they can't. So I almost feel like this is what government intervention was made for. Like you go in there. I mean, did you read that thing? Where was it today? Where the woman, in the Times, a Hispanic voter talking about how Democrats murder children. And she knows this because she saw it on the internet. Like, government needs to intervene. Like, unless Democrats are murdering children somewhere that I haven't heard about, like, this is not good. And like, the problem is because we've moved to technology, we have no intervention. And so, like, remember, I mean, 50 years ago, you couldn't, I mean, even now you couldn't print that in a newspaper, right? You get sued.
Well, what I think is interesting, I think you're exactly right. But there's like two different levels and a couple different levels. But like one is it's like there's the stuff that Trump himself was tweeting, right? Or like, for example, like the stuff he himself was saying, and that was getting picked up because it kind of deservedly so, like, because it was the president saying crazy things by the news cycle. But like the thing that's so interesting to me is that like what spreads that disinformation is not just Facebook. It is like usually clips of something that Trump said that show up on CNN, and then somebody clips it and shares it on Facebook, and then the clip goes viral. And if it wasn't on CNN in the first place, I don't know how easily it would go viral. Does that make sense? But maybe I'm completely off the grid here. But like,
really true in the early days of Trump, when people really didn't know how to cover him. So you'd see articles that would say, like, Trump says Hillary Clinton Hillary Clinton has 10,000 deleted email. They couldn't figure out how to control him. And then I think media got better covering Trump. But I do agree that fundamentally Trump is Trump. And so, like, the more you publish a clip, you have that same problem. So I think that's right.
But it's to Ben's point that it's circular, that it's like it's an infrastructure problem. Right. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a radicalizing media culture that is pushing people in a direction that they have wanted to go and have been to some degree restrained by a media culture, then they are demanding more of that media culture. So, it is the Republican public that caused Newsmax and OAN to be viable alternatives to Fox that are causing Fox to have to compete with stuff. I don't even want to call it on its crazy flank. And I think all of these cultural features have external factors that are both pushing them to radicalize and are radicalizing them at the same time.
I think that's right.
Yeah. I've been having this thought just a lot lately. I just am kind of media saturated now that I'm like, Molly, I don't know if you know this, but I had kind of gone on a news diet while Trump was in office and the pandemic was happening, mostly not because of the pandemic. Actually, it was mostly because I just could not, like, mental health wise, handle all of the Trump news. It was too dysphoric and I just couldn't handle it. And so now I'm back to reading the news every day, and I'm kind of like, it's actually kind of interesting to take such a big break from really, really from going to looking at the news once a day to looking at it 25 times a day.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, holy fuck, there is so much content I don't need. There is so much content. There is just so much content. It is not good. It is not thoughtful. There are so many headlines with question marks. There are so many, there's just it's just, and I was like, would it be bad if there was just less of this? And it's, I don't know. It just kind of has been a very bizarre experience in the last couple of weeks.
So, talk to us about your podcast. It was originally you and Rick. Now it's just you.
Yes.
And of course the world is a little bit less abnormal than it used to be. So, what is the future of the new abnormal?
I have to say, I really, really, really have fun doing it. It's the most successful thing I've ever done by a lot, weirdly. And
how do you measure success?
No, I mean, it's it's the thing.
It's high up there on the Apple charts.
When I
up
see
there
people,
with Call Her Daddy.
Right. That's right. When I see people, they're like, "Oh, I listen to people always talk to me about it." I'm like, "Really?" You do all these things, you sit and you in your room and you write a fucking book and no one ever sees it. And then you do this thing that takes you 2 hours. Well, actually, it takes me a long time because I need to do a lot of things. But I pay no attention to all of my dogs. But,
if any of your dogs make their way in within grabbing distance, please exercise your arms.
I will. Puppy is a big fan. But so, no, but people are always people are I listen to it. This one is I'm listening to it. So that makes me think it's successful. But I love doing it. It's really fun. We get really good guests. And, it's just, I don't know. I have a great time. Because we have all these really, we interviewed this guy for tomorrow who's this amazing guy who does these shows on PBS, who is incredible. I mean, we just have these really interesting, I'm very interested in people, so I find it fascinating, so I love doing it. And sometimes we had Hunter Biden, that was a big one. Though one of my kids is Mom, the best moment of your career was interviewing Hunter Biden. Isn't that so pathetic? And I was like, my kids are really, I have a lot of teenagers, so they're very harsh.
Kids these days, Molly. Jesus.
My
God.
Kids, Hunter Biden isn't even the good one. And I was like, thanks.
Wow. Who's the good one? Major?
No, Bo, who died.
Oh.
So I was like, all right.
True.
Hunter's kind of the fuck up. I was like, well, that's sort of the point. But yeah, no, we get all sorts of senators and congressmen. I mean, the one thing that we do badly, I think that I do really badly, is I do really badly with celebrities.
How do you mean?
I would actually think you'd be very good at that. That surprises me.
it's fun with politicians because you can ask them, like, you know, you can try to trip them up. Like, we had Andrew Yang, we gave him a very hard time, but like,
You give him a hard time about the pizza thing.
About everything. About
Okay,
it.
good.
Is Val Demings going to be his police chief? No, she's not going to fucking be his police chief. The congresswoman, she's going to run for governor. Like, I mean, think about how patronizing and misogynistic that is. Like, she's one of the most famous electeds in Florida, right? Like, come on, man. As Joe Biden says, come on, man. So no, but wasn't it? Oh, we had Sharon Stone. She was really hard. Like, some of these celebrities are really hard because, like, you can't, what are you going to ask them about, like, acting? Right? I don't understand about acting. I don't know anything. You don't know anything. Nobody cares. Like, and so that's actually hard. What's fun is, like, I mean, there's some celebrities who are more fun, and, like, there's some comedians who are really funny. Like, we had Ike Barinholtz. He was really, really funny. But, you know, I have a good time. I love it because I'm just fascinated by the stuff people are doing. And there's a lot of fun stuff. And then I also can do, like, we had Nikki Fried, who's like the ag chair of Florida. She's the most powerful Democrat in Florida. And she's going to run for governor probably. And so that kind of stuff is really, it's fascinating to me. And there are a lot of interesting people that are not on the cable news cycle. So you don't see them, but they're actually fascinating people that you want to interview. So that ends up being great.
Yeah, that's actually been my experience with the Lawfare podcast over the years, is the list of people who we have access to that just aren't part of the cable news circuit, is our highest value group of people. So what is Rick's future with the podcast? Is that still in flux because of the investigation or the internal stuff at Lincoln Project, or is there some known answer to that question?
I don't know what's happening there. I don't know. I hope Rick will talk about that soon. I hope he's, you know, we are still very good friends and we talk all the time. So, but I don't know, you know, I don't really know, you know, it's, for me, it's an unknown unknown.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm one of those people, like, I don't want to know anything that I can't tell everyone. So if there's something that I can't know, I just don't even want to know it.
Yep.
That makes any sense.
No, it totally makes sense. We have a couple of questions. It's actually a hard day for questions today because we've answered inadvertently like half of the questions in the conversation around the vaccination. And then a bunch of people want to know if I can sue my doorman, apparently, which I'm pretty sure that or my property manager, which I'm pretty sure that I cannot, nor would I want to. But because we were just talking about the mayoral election. Hello, Reverend Doctor. It's so lovely to see you.
How are you guys?
Your hair looks cute. Did you get it cut?
I did. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
It feels so much lighter. So my pre-pandemic do.
That's great.
Thank you. So Molly, I'm a big fan. I enjoy your podcast and your writing work, so it's great to have you on. My questions had to do with how conditions are in New York currently, now that we're hopefully coming out of the pandemic. What problems do you see? And then how does the New York mayoral race, what are your thoughts on that? And how does that play into just where you think the city is right now? Thanks.
Thank you. That's a great question. And it's like my wheelhouse is like pandemic and New York, right? Because I grew up in New York. New York is like my whole life. So I feel really confident answering both those questions, no legal stuff. And I think my husband has a special guest star.
Yes!
Here we go. Here. Here. It's like, what is happening?
I remember him.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Hello. Oh my God. Yay, we got it.
So here he is, puppy Leo. But yes, he's a rescue puppy from Bald is Beautiful Rescue, and he's
I know
Yeah.
everything about Leo. I just want you like
He
Chinese
was
crested.
he
Yes.
was very friendly at our book party.
He's naked. He's very cute.
He was super sweet.
So anyway, so what I would say about New York is it's very. I went to dinner outside on Friday and Saturday night, and it was totally great. The city is really exciting and booming, and I think there are a lot of people here. Look at this dog is now standing on my lap, ready to jump off. Um, I think it's pretty good right now. We have pretty good numbers. We're getting a lot of vaccination done. Our restaurants are like 50%, 25%, but you're definitely seeing indoor eating. I think things feel really good here. I would say there's a lot, like you come out and there's a lot that hasn't survived, right? Like restaurants. I mean, that is really kind of sad. Like I was walking down the street the other day and like I was looking at places that had closed, and so there are casualties, which is really sad, but I do think the city's getting back to normal and it's really crowded, which is exciting. The mayor's race is an interesting. I would say this about the race. You know what is actually true? I can say this because I feel like we're in a small group. Corey Johnson didn't run for mayor because I think he just had too much going on. He's the city council speaker, and he should have. And I thought at the time he shouldn't have because there were so many people running. But it actually turns out that Corey is one of the few people who is like very charismatic and fun. So people like him the way they like Yang. He gets a lot of media attention, but he's also been like basically running the city. So he actually would have been a really great candidate. What we have right now is this terrible situation where people are really burned out from the presidential race. They're thrilled that we got rid of Trump. So they're not really focused. It's going to be in June. It's a massive, massive field with ranked choice voting, which is really crazy. And so we don't know what's going to happen. So right now, what it is we have Andrew Yang like 20 points ahead, right? And then we have, I think Eric Adams is number 2 and Maya Wiley is number 3. And I don't know what's going to happen. I think I don't know if Stringer's dropped out yet, but I think he will. There are a number of people who are like in this race. But the candidate, and I say this because I don't really know New York City government the way my editor at The Beast, Harry Siegel, does. So I always listen to Harry, and whenever we talk about it, I always like bring Harry in. But Harry says that Catherine Garcia is really the most competent, and she's polling at, very low. So it's hard. And every time we cover it on the pod, people don't really want it. Like they don't like it. They're not interested in it. So
That's interesting. And what's the metric of that? Just the download numbers or the response you get?
Response is really, people just are not interested, and they're saying, and I mean, I like Maya a lot. The problem with Maya is that I think, and this is not my problem with Maya, this is a problem that I think some New Yorkers have with Maya, is that she worked in the de Blasio administration, and people hate de Blasio so much that I don't know if that, but she's great, and I think she'd be great. But yeah, it's a whole, it's like people are just out of energy, which is a problem.
So can we go back to the New York City thing? Because I want to talk to you more about that and your impressions, because I have not been up to the Upper West Side since I was at your house like over a year ago. And Manhattan generally, I have kind of like not spent any time in. So I've been in downtown Brooklyn, and there has been a couple of really fascinating land use decisions. One of them is that Fifth Avenue and Park Slope, which is like kind of a main commercial mixed use zoning drag of like restaurants and storefronts, many of which are gone. But the has had and I don't know how much this is also happening in Manhattan, has had every weekend from 11 until 4 or 11 until 5, the entire street gets shut down for like I don't know, like 2 or 3 miles. And the entire street like gets covered in tables, and it is like an almost like party, like festival type block party like atmosphere, except it's not one block. It's like block after block after block. And all of the restaurants are out on the street, and people are just walking around in the middle of the street with their, and it is like this really fascinating, like I wrote my note in law school about eminent domain and the Atlantic Yards project, which is now the Barclays Center. And it is just, but this is like, and there's this expansive idea in the courts now of public use and what counts as public use to like any type of economic thing. This is like this really fascinating take back of literally public streets, and the better use of public streets rather than to let cars drive on them is to give them over to private businesses to like have restaurants on. And it's amazing. It's just this incredible idea. And I'm just like completely wondering how long it's going to last.
It's bizarro Robert Moses.
Yes.
I think what I like about it is we have all these outdoor restaurant spaces now everywhere. I really like it. I'm really happy. The thing I really like as someone with 15 dogs is that because restaurants are just happy to be in business, they let you bring your dog.
Yeah.
Which they didn't during Bloomberg. And I thought Bloomberg was a pretty good city manager. I mean, you can say what you want about his issues in any other way. You know, he's certainly not a liberal, but he was a pretty good city manager just in the management of the city. But one of the things, he hated pets. And so he started all these like no dogs in restaurants, no dogs in this, no dogs in that, no dogs. And now that's all gone because everyone's just happy to still be in business. So that is really great.
Ben, has anything like this happened in DC?
Yes. There are a bunch of, they usually don't close the whole street, but what they do is they close the parking lane of the street and they let the restaurants build out tables into it. And traffic is sufficiently low that you can do that on a lot of streets without making it hard to drive on. So it's not really like the streets are shut down and turn into pedestrian malls. It's really like the restaurants have encroached on one lane of traffic. And as long as traffic stays down at a depressed rate, it's a really good use of public space. I haven't heard anybody complaining about it. It's, it's not hard to pass on Wisconsin Avenue or on, downtown. It's not hard to get through. So people don't seem to mind, and it's very good for the restaurants because it's allowed them to have not full capacity, but something approaching a capacity. The other thing they've done is they've built big tents. That
we don't have tents. We have these weird like shell bubble things.
So
I don't know.
These are large tents that are open kind of on one side, and they heat them. And so they've been operating all through the winter. You can, even on the coldest days, you could sit in them with a jacket and be reasonably warm and have a meal. So it's been I think a pretty good. I do have to say, and I've said this on the show before, I think DC is not getting enough credit for the quality of its governance during the pandemic. And, it's always, people love to talk about DC in terms of Marion Barry and the previous bad administration that DC has had. But right now, according to the New York Times data, DC is 13th in vaccines in the country among the states, which is incredibly impressive, actually, given, how, given a lot of factors in DC. It has never been a hot spot for transmission. Even when New York was at its worst, DC was pretty under control. And I just think we've really, let me be really blunt about it. If DC had a charismatic white mayor, that person would be a national figure
Yeah,
right now.
I definitely think that that's true. And she's a great interview. We had her on the podcast and she's great. I mean, she's
She's
really fun.
she has quietly, she's not a super charismatic person. But she's done a terrific job under difficult circumstances. She's
Yeah.
had the protests, both the Black Lives Matter protests that have,
Yeah.
and the confrontations with Bill Barr and company. She's also had January 6th. I mean, she's had some pretty difficult stuff happen in the middle of it. And, this is a city that has been pretty ground zero in some previous public health problems. And it has just been very well governed through this process. The vaccine distribution, a lot of people were complaining about it at the beginning, some very loudly and I thought very unfairly. We're, it's a marathon, not a sprint. We're well into it now, and 50% of DC is vaccinated. That's, as good as Maryland and better than Virginia. And that's a impressive accomplishment given the underserved nature of a lot of the DC population.
Yeah, totally. Daniel, the floor is yours.
I am wondering what you think of how the Biden administration is positioning itself with respect to the policies it's already passed and its proposed policies for the 2022 midterms, and how much of an uphill battle due to structural forces do you think we'll face in keeping the crazies out?
Molly, I think that was for you.
Okay, they got to pass HR1. I mean, they have to figure out a way to pass that first. That's number one. I think, and I don't know how that happens, but I think that's going to be a big deal. I also think that it's important. I don't know. I mean, look, historically, the party in power loses in the midterms. This Senate race there's a number of interesting Senate races, a number of, Ohio, Pennsylvania, it could be, there's a lot of stuff. I think it's going to be really interesting, but I think number one has to be the voting rights. I think that should be Biden's focus right now, as much as I love infrastructure and want that to happen too. If we don't have voting, we have nothing. Sorry, not to be unfun.
Well, that's what we're all about here. Genevieve, so lovely to see you. As always, hold on, I have to unmute you, I think. The floor is yours.
Hello. So my question kind of circles back to the vaccines. And I feel that there's a lot of vaccine hesitancy, setting aside the one that's rooted in political bias.
Right.
Because there's a fundamental misunderstanding about the development and approval process of the vaccine. And I was hoping you could speak briefly about your impression of the studies or share something you'd want to tell someone who's hesitant for that reason particularly.
Yeah, well, I feel very good. I feel like I'm in a unique position to answer this question because I participated in the Pfizer study and was a trial participant. And actually, my husband was a trial participant. And one of my best friends, I pushed everybody to do it because I felt like this was the only way we're going to get out of this thing. And I also knew that it was very safe. What I would say about the mRNA vaccines, that's the first thing, is that the technology has been around for a while. You guys want to see another dog? I have another dog here. This one is very heavy, though. Oh. This is Cerberus. He's a giant. He's like he eats his feelings, but we love him.
He does not look that large, but that is fine.
For a dog, for this breed of dog, he's like the biggest one ever.
Okay.
But
he looks very placid.
Yes, he's just like hello.
He's the best. He's very chill. But so what I would say is technology has been around longer than you think, right? So there's been other stuff with this vaccine. There's going to be now, I think, I keep trying to get other people to get excited about this with me. They aren't yet, but I think they will be. we're going to have this golden age of vaccinations now because we've spent so much money and time on it. So I'm very excited. But what I would say to people is that we did a lot of testing, right? Like the vaccine itself took a week. I mean, these vaccines are very easy and they're not very easy, but they're quick to figure out. And the sequencing was quick. And so there's that. I would say to people, it's very safe. And there are millions of people who have already had it. And there's a malaria vaccine that looks like it's on the horizon, which is going to be incredible. So I would say that. And my feeling is if people have hesitancy, they should take the J&J because the J&J is a much more traditional kind of vaccine, right? It's a viral vector versus an mRNA. I personally think the mRNA is very safe. And from what I've seen, it's just a sort of evolution of how we're going to vaccinate people. But the J&J is incredibly safe. And that would be a no-brainer to me because it's more traditional.
Here's what I would say to somebody who was vaccine hesitant. We all thought that cell phones were going to be a privacy problem, and they are, but they delivered such convenience, and ditto the internet, right? And so letting Bill Gates put the 5G microchip in your bloodstream, it's going to deliver a lot of service to you. Now, I mean, will it give him control over?
Oh, we fixed the problem, Molly. I like
it. I mean, I think.
I'm just kidding.
Sorry, I think you should just lean into the conspiracy theory.
Oh, there he goes again. Sorry, you keep cutting out, Ben. I don't know what's happening.
Just talk about the good side of whatever they think is going to happen.
Cerberus thinks it's a good idea.
Yes.
I can't believe the Gateses are getting divorced. As this was happening, the Gates.
I know that happened on the thing. It happened. In
it's because he tried to slip a little microbot into her bloodstream and with 5G, and she got upset about it, as one does.
There's no hope now.
There is no hope. Ben, we have to end on time because Ben. I don't know if you know this, Molly. Ben is getting on a train, and
I'm going to Miami by Amtrak.
No, don't do that.
On a sleeper car.
Trains are good.
Yeah, trains.
Why are you going to Miami?
Because I'm tired of being in the same place, and I've got a bunch of hiring to do for Lawfare, and I just thought I would take trains around the country. So tomorrow we will be with you live from Amtrak.
He's going to be solving a murder.
From somewhere, yeah, we're definitely relying on there being a murder on the train.
It's just great. You'll love it.
No, I'm not going to use Amtrak's Wi-Fi. I bring my own. We're gonna.
We almost banned the last person who suggested that Ben would have ever deigned to have used.
I have standards, guys.
Banned from the show.
No, you will never be banned from the show.
Look how good my dog is. I mean, he's
a very good dog. I'm pretty much loving the look up with the white of the eye and the kind of are we done now? Can I go? And
this dog is the greatest. I mean, you could see he's like a human. He's got a human soul.
He's very good. Aww.
And his name is Cerberus, which I really do believe in giving dogs Greek names. Not that I've ever done it. But the other day, I was at the house of a friend who has a dog who is the sweetest puppy in the world, and the dog's name is Ajax, which is the most improbable name for a dog like this, because the dog just wants to be petted and loved, and really is the least likely to strike you down with a spear that you can imagine. I
love that. I once met a dog named Mephistopheles.
That's excellent. After our former troll in the chat, I have often thought that Vercingetorix would be a great name for a dog. We will be back tomorrow. Molly Jong Fast, you're a great American. It is so good to see you again.
It was so great to see you.
We will be back 23 hours and 1 minute from now.
I just don't want to get banned. That's all.
You're never banned.
You're so not banned.
Yeah, you're so not banned. I meant from the chat. Someone got banned from the chat.
And until then, Kate?
We don't have fun anymore, but we do have train trips. Can't wait to see you on the train tomorrow, Ben.
I will do a Twitter thread photo essay.
Do your best to also make sure that there is a murder. You know, this is in your control.
I will do everything short of committing it myself.
I will send you Murder on the Orient Express to watch tonight.
I'm excited about it.
But the modern one is good too.
No, it's not. It's terrible. Don't say that, Molly.
I mean, the modern one is not.
No, the David Suchet one. Only the David Suchet one. It's so good.
Toy Tanks has it right. I'm going to instigate the murder. I'm going to incite it and then investigate who committed it.
That sounds like a witness murder.
A total bait and switch on my part. We will see you tomorrow.